What is up, everyone? Today we are talking mushrooms. Yeah, once again. So I, just a couple months ago, did my very first mushroom ceremony, which is different from just taking mushrooms on your own. The ceremony is a lot more involved. And it was my very first ceremony. It was not my first time doing mushrooms, but it was my first ceremony. And this ceremony and this experience was, like I said, a lot different. And I had a lot of different takeaways, and it was a completely different experience as compared to my first one. So if you've done mushrooms or if you haven't done mushrooms, but you're curious of what an actual ceremony is like, then this is the video for you. So first off, what is the difference between a ceremony and just doing it yourself? Well, the primary difference is, I'll just speak from my experience. In my experience, I was doing it with other people. There were around 10 to 12 other people in the entire group. And there were also 2 facilitators. And I would say this is the primary difference between a ceremony and doing it yourself. When you're doing a ceremony, you actually have people there that know what they're doing. And their entire job is just to take care of you. They're not doing anything, they're just serving you and then making sure that you're gonna have a good experience. Or at least that you're not gonna totally freak out and just have a psychiatric arrest or whatever even term you would use, a bad trip, okay? So like I said, I was doing it with around 10 to 12 other people. There were 2 facilitators. And the whole purpose is just to prove that you are not just thinking of it as this kind of recreational drug that you do for fun. Mushrooms can be that, and psychedelics can be that. But in a ceremony, you're really saying, look, I understand that this kind of plant medicine can be very powerful for me psychologically and as a sort of psychotherapy. Almost like going to therapy, you experience a lot of very powerful emotions and feelings and transformations when you take psychedelics if you do them properly. So a ceremony is really just saying, I'm taking this seriously. And this particular ceremony I did when I was in Costa Rica. So I was set up at the house that we were staying at, right on the water, literally 20 feet from the beach. Next to the pool. It was a gorgeous location. Right as the sun was setting, we were starting. We had just a little circle kind of set up with blankets and pillows and candles and nice music playing and all this kind of stuff. So before the ceremony starts, you go to the facilitator and you talk to them and you tell them what your intention is going into the ceremony, what your experience is with mushrooms before, and what you're wanting to get out of it. So I went up to him and I talked to him about this whole experience. About my previous experience and what I wanted to get out of this one. And I told him that my previous experience had been just by myself in a dark room with my eyes closed. Well, not by myself, but just one other friend. And in a dark room with my eyes closed, and I had some really intense visions and experiences with regards to death and a fear of death and suffering and rebirth and a bunch of really crazy other stuff that maybe I'll make another video about if that sounds interesting to any of you guys. I told him this, and then I told him that he guessed that that was probably around 2 to 2.5 grams, because I didn't know the exact gram dosage. And I told him that I wanted to do 4 this time at the ceremony, and we actually settled on 3.5. He didn't think I was quite up for 4. So I said, fine, 3.5 is good. And then I went back to the main area and went to another facilitator, and she was arranging some pre-rituals. And you know, pre-ceremony, another big part of a ceremony is acting out that respect, showing that respect through action, not just through words. So whether it be these pre-ceremony rituals we did of praying to different directions, I don't remember the exact details. I am no expert on these things, but we paid respect to each god or goddess in each direction, and then including the sun and the earth. And we smoked tobacco and did a tobacco ceremony where you kind of blow it to cleanse yourself of any energies, or honestly, I don't know all the details. I did it with respect, I did it with intention. I said, I'm here, I'm not gonna question any of this stuff, I'm just gonna do it with a full heart and trust, and I can think about it later if I want. So I did all these things, and another one of them was pulling tarot cards. And the tarot card that I pulled was the protection card, which actually I felt I'd never pulled tarot cards before. And I kind of looked at them pretty skeptically as like, I don't really know what this does. I don't know if I believe that it has any real use, but I pulled this card and protection came up. And I actually felt somewhat of a connection to that. I was like, oh, okay, this kind of fits with the whole vibe I was going for, my intention of this whole trip, because my intention going into it was to surrender into letting something else take care of me. Because before I got there and before I got to Costa Rica, I was feeling kind of burnt out of feeling like I was always having to be the one to be there for other people. You know, if you're the friend that other people kind of lean on or other people rely on, or in past relationships, you're kind of just always the anchor and the solid person, the one that's expected to just be good throughout everything. And I was kind of tired of that. So I was like, I kind of want someone else to just take care of me for a minute and allow me to like lean on their shoulder instead of always being the one that other people lean on. So my intention going into it was just to kind of surrender into that and to trust that there was going to be something bigger than me taking care of me, that I didn't always have to fight and look out for myself and be super independent, because I am really independent. But my intention going into it was just kind of like to let go of that and say like, it's okay, I can let go and I can trust that something else or someone else will be there to catch me or take care of me. So that was my intention going into it. And we're doing all these rituals, and I pulled that tarot card and I got the protection card. And then in the other ritual where we're looking at the different directions, finally, the last one, I think, or the second to last one, was kneeling down and placing our hand, like our full hand, kind of like flat on the earth. So here's the ground, you go, boom, right? And I actually felt, this was after I pulled the tarot card, I felt like I felt something. I don't know, could have just been purely psychological, could have been the warmth in the ground or something like that, but I felt some kind of deeper connection to Mother Earth. And that'll be a big part of later in the experience. So this was all pre-ritual. And finally, we kind of speak out our intentions, we talk as a group, and we finally like, okay, we're good to go. And both facilitators come out. They have all of these glasses prepared with the mushroom mix in them. They're like a chocolate with ginger and the mushrooms, and all the labels for everyone's names. And I got mine, 3.5 grams. I drink it, and then you wait 30 to 45 minutes for it to really kick in. So people kind of wander around, go to the bathroom one last time, and then we all sit down, lie down, and then put our mindfolds on, which are just really good blindfolds that block out everything. So at this point, everyone's lying down, they're relaxing, letting it kind of soothe over them. We still, I think, have like calm, kind of tribal-ish music playing in the background. And I'm lying there and I'm like waiting for it to kick in, kind of just noticing. I've taken it before, so I know kind of what to expect. And sure enough, like 40 minutes in, I start having these slight visions of really it's very synced with the music. I don't know how common that is. I know it's somewhat common, but when I take mushrooms so far, I get really synced in with the music. And the music really affects what I see as far as the visuals go. And the speed of them, the shape of them, the rapidity or the slowness, like everything, the color, it all is affected by the music. So I'm seeing all these shapes and I see kind of some faces throughout and there. But really it's pretty low key so far. I'm like, okay, I can wait, I'm patient, I'll wait. But then next to me, there's a girl named Kelly. And Kelly and I are already pretty good friends at this point. And I asked her permission to use her contribution in this story, because she made quite a contribution to my experience. So she was lying next to me, maybe like 3 feet away from me. I don't know, a few feet away from me. And she was doing a heroic dose, which is a 5-gram mushroom trip. And she also made an entire video talking about all of her experience, which I will link in one of these corners and in the description. I really enjoyed that video, especially knowing that I was one of the people there. But she has a really great video. Anyways, back to my story. So I'm lying here and Kelly's off to the side. And Kelly starts having like an experience. I just start hearing like a lot of noises coming from over there. Like, oh fuck, ooh. She like started like laughing and then like kind of moaning too. And I like kind of sexually moaning, but not quite, but enough for me to like question if that was what was going on. And then like the, whew, oh shit. And then like, just lots of that kind of stuff. She's like shaking and all this stuff. And so soon enough, the facilitators, they come over and they're like trying to take care of her, right? They're looking at her and they're like starting to make all these, like play all these music instruments and spray this stuff on her and like giving her a lot of attention, making sure that she's gonna have a good experience, right? Because that was the whole goal of the facilitators. That's the reason they're there. So that she's getting all this attention like right next to me, and all this stuff is going like right in my ears too, because our heads are like a couple feet away from each other. And I'm just lying here like, God damn, Kelly is having a trip right now. And I'm just like, what, seeing a couple of faces? Some colors and like some faces and shit, but I'm still like very coherent. I'm very conscious, and I could open my eyes, I could think pretty clearly at that point still. And I was starting to feel like, man, I didn't take enough. And I was really starting to go back and forth about, should I take more? And then I'd kind of like teeter-totter back and forth again and again and again. I'd be like, oh, I should take more. It's like, no, just relax, surrender into it. This was what you wanted. Like, if you just took more, then it'd kind of just be overwhelming. You wouldn't have to try to surrender. And so I was like, okay. So then I stopped thinking, I kind of meditate, enter my meditative state, and I'd start feeling the effects more strongly and have these intense visuals and things. And then I'd see something and then I'd start thinking about it. I was like, oh, what was that? Was that connected to that thing? And then all this, and I would start thinking again and I'd pull myself out of it. Because in my experience, when you're on mushrooms, but you're not quite like totally, you're not overloaded, you're not doing a heroic dose or anything, the more you think, you can pull yourself out of it if you think too much. You really have to almost start meditating and clearing your mind for it to start becoming the primary thing in your experience. So I don't know how long I went back and forth, like wondering if I should ask for more and deciding not to, and then wondering again, deciding not to. It had to be at least half an hour, probably longer. But eventually I finally decided, you know what? No, I'm not gonna ask for more. I'm just gonna surrender into this thing, and that's that. And I'm just gonna like pretend I'm gonna go to sleep, because going to sleep is like the most relaxing thing you can do, right? So I decide that. I was like, all right. So I pull up my little blanket. I get my little blanket, my towel as a blanket. I pull up my towel over me and I just kind of like turn onto my side and pretty much like act like I'm going to bed. I turn over my side and my eyes are closed and I still have my mindfold on. Kelly's like a couple feet away from me, still having a trip, but I'm just like, you know what? I'm doing my thing. So I lied down and I just acted like I was going to sleep. And I don't remember the exact when I started to experience things beyond that, but sooner or later, I started feeling like I was just melting into the ground. And keep in mind, I am on a concrete floor. But I was feeling like I was on the most comfortable bed of my entire life. Like, holy shit, this floor feels amazing. I have a single towel and I'm on concrete, but I feel like I'm floating on like clouds of heaven or something like this. And I just got super comfortable, really, really relaxed, and just really started washing away everything. All the thoughts that were in my head and running around and thoughts about asking for more, all that stuff kind of just slowly started to fade away. And I basically felt like I was going to sleep, but I wasn't quite yet. I started melting into the ground. And then I started having this connection, it felt like, with Mother Earth. It felt like she was somehow providing this space for me, and I was just sinking into it. I just had to move really quick because there are people around me, and I'm not wanting to sound like some crazy dude who's talking about mushrooms and like melting into the earth while other people are listening. So we're gonna continue the story now. So I'm melting into the earth, right? Melting into this concrete that feels like heavenly clouds or whatever kind of freaking word I used. And I just started feeling like Mother Earth was providing that thing that I had asked for earlier. That thing of being a place for me to just like totally relax and to surrender into, and to trust that someone else was gonna take care of me. And I just started feeling like I was this like little kid, like nuzzling up into like Mother Earth's big ass arms, you know? And I was like the most relaxing sensation I've ever felt, because it was just a total surrender of all cares, all worries, all concerns. Like, just give up everything, trust that it's gonna be all right and that someone else is looking out for you. And I just had this totally like warm, peaceful feeling. And I sat in that for a little while. And then Kelly's still next to me, right? A few feet away from me. And she's finally coming down from her little trip, her little experience. I could kind of tell, she's like coming down from it. It's like, you know what? I bet you Kelly could use some of this like nice, like warm, loving energy that I'm getting so much of right now. So I just decided I'm gonna try to channel this feeling and this energy or whatever it is. I'm gonna try to channel it to Kelly right now. Just like send her everything that I'm feeling. And I started feeling like I was acting as a channel just for this kind of motherly energy or just loving energy, sending all of that to her directly from Mother Earth through me. I wasn't the one doing it. I was just acting as a channel, giving it to her. And the interesting thing was that instead of like, you know, when you're kind of like being the anchor for someone else and you're trying to hold them up and support them, it can get kind of exhausting, right? You're like, how I was before. I was like, geez, I just want someone else to like take care of me for a second. This was different in that while I was giving so much, like I was giving everything that I could, I actually wasn't drained. I was the opposite. I was super, super fulfilled. I was like feeling amazing. Like, wow, this fills me up. This is so fulfilling to me. And it's kind of my opportunity, either with masculine energy or as a man or however you want to say it, to be that rock and that anchor to other people. Like, that is a strength that I do have. And I do need to share that with the world. And that's a gift that I have to share with the world. But it doesn't have to be draining all the time. Because as long as I am connected to something bigger than me, in this case, like nature, the ocean, or the beach, which I'm right next to, whatever it may be, then I won't get drained because I will be connected to like the source itself, the power source. I kind of think of it as a battery. Like, you need to charge something. I am the battery. You can drain me. But if I plug into the wall, then it's never ending, right? Because power definitely doesn't come from, never mind. That's how I felt. And I felt like I was a big tree, like extending its roots around Kelly, just like extending its roots through the ground and like offering like a firm yet like gentle embrace. And that might sound like sexual or something, but it really wasn't. It was just like, I'm gonna try to give this girl the kind of energy that she needs right now. That sounded like a pretty intense trip. And that's what I did. And it felt amazing. And maybe she felt it, maybe she didn't. I don't really care. I don't know. But that's what I did. So after I had that melting in the ground and giving my energy to Kelly experience, I was feeling pretty good. And I mentally started to kind of explore my mind, because at that point I was like, I'd been in that trip for a couple hours and I could still kind of think like I could earlier, right? I'm like, well, my intention going into this, my expectation going into this trip was that there was gonna be something that came up of like another kind of demon to fight and something else to overcome in my mind, because my previous experience was super rough and kind of painful and hard. I expected there to be something like that. And so I made this kind of mental introspection of, are there still demons inside that I could fight or like overcome? And I just got this answer. It's kind of like I was talking to my mom or some kind of motherly figure, which in this case was Mother Earth. It felt like I was talking to Mother Earth, and I was just like, you know, like, is there shit in there that I can kind of like work on and pick out and work, like overcome and all this stuff? I just got like, yeah, this stuff's there, but you don't need to go overcome it. Like, you don't need to go do that. You don't need to fix everything about yourself and make yourself perfect. And B, like, it doesn't have to be a battle either. You could go and you could treat it like you were a little kid and you're going out to play with your friends and like explore the woods and shit and find something in the woods and just like battle a monster or whatever, but like it's a fun adventure, you know? Instead of it being like this hard challenge and grueling experience of like a gotta fix this shit about myself. It could be like, oh, it's like a fun adventure as a little kid. And I kind of heard the motherly figure just like, just as long as you're back by supper, you know, go fight your demons and do all your shit. I don't really care what you're doing, but just be back by supper and we're all good. And that was kind of Mother Earth and I having that little conversation. I was like, I just remember I was lying there and I just had this little giggle. I just giggled to myself real quick, like, oh, that's nice. I know it sounds really weird, but it was amazing and I'm not gonna apologize for it. So after I had that experience, what else? I'm sure there's plenty of other stuff that happened that I don't recall because honestly, it's really hard to remember a mushroom trip unless you write it all down. And I did take some notes and that's where I'm getting this information because I would not have remembered any of it if I had not written it down that night. So if you're gonna do mushrooms and you wanna remember your kind of insights, definitely write it down. But after that happened, eventually I actually just fell asleep. I was just lying there and I conked out. And it was an amazing sleep, but it only lasted probably like an hour or so because the next thing I remember is like hearing voices. I'm lying there, I'm like, oh, it's time to get up, but like, it's all good. And I think I fell back asleep for a few minutes and then I hear more voices and I pull my blindfold open and everyone else is sitting up, talking, everyone's good, and like lights are back on. I was like, oh shit, like I conked out. So I got back up and Kelly's sitting next to me and I just like, I look over at her and I don't even think I say anything, but she gives me that look and I give her that look of just like, you know what just happened? You know everything that was going on your end. She's just like, she knew that she was loud and she impacted my experience, but I just found it hilarious. So I was looking at her, she was looking at me, and we just started busting out laughing, like hysterical laughter, like the clearest, purest laughter that I had had in a long, long time. And I was just like, it was honestly like the perfect little cherry on top of the experience. Like you have the little mushroom psychedelic trip, but then you come back to reality and you just like have a hysterical laughing fit with a good friend and you're like, I'm feeling good. So it was a beautiful end to the night. Then we kind of just came back to our senses. Everyone sat around in a circle and shared their kind of experience if they wanted to. I told about my experience. I shared the thing with Kelly and she was again like cracking up and I was cracking up again. And that's pretty much it. We kind of just like chatted for a little bit. People started going home. I was staying there, so I just hung out and talked with people and then went back and took some notes, like I said earlier, because I would not have remembered probably hardly any of this if I had not taken notes. So I guess advice for people considering doing mushrooms or mushroom ceremony or any of this kind of stuff. Make sure you know what you're doing and who you're doing it with. Set and setting is a big thing. There are plenty of resources that you can find online of how to have a proper mushroom experience that I'm not going to link to, honestly, because you can just Google it. So just Google that and make sure you're doing it right, because you can have a bad experience. If I had taken more mushrooms my first trip and I had had the experience I had on my first trip, but I forgot that I was on mushrooms, that would have been a very, very, very hard night. The only thing that made it tolerable was the fact that I remembered that I was on mushrooms. So be careful. I do think it's worth meditating for at least like a week or two before you have the experience, because meditation helps you train your mind and calm yourself and learn to be more aware of what you're experiencing. And when you're taking mushrooms, that can be really valuable because, like I mentioned earlier, if you just get caught in your head and you start thinking and getting thought loops, you're not gonna have a great experience. You're just gonna be thinking while you're on mushrooms. Other than that, I would recommend a ceremony. I would recommend, I know I might have made it sound like you want to do it alone, because if someone else like just interrupts your experience, that can be, I wouldn't say it made my experience any lesser. I would actually say that Kelly was kind of the real life manifestation of the feminine energy that I was experiencing through Mother Earth. So it was interesting. I feel like without Kelly's input, I wouldn't have had the same experience, and I think that I am happy with my experience and what I did have. So you just gotta accept what happens and be grateful for it and find the value in it. And any lesson that you take out of it, like for me, the lesson that, oh, I just need to be connected to something bigger than myself when I'm giving support to other people, try to make that into a daily practice, because if you don't implement the lessons into your life in an actual practice, you're gonna forget them. It's not just like you take mushrooms, you have these crazy realizations and then you're like enlightened or some shit. No, you have these realizations, you go, oh, that's an interesting thing about myself I didn't realize. Now I need to like implement that lesson into my life somehow. So for me, it was get connected with nature at least once a day. Ideally, like when I'm meditating, or just go to the beach or do something outside, get connected with nature and really feel nature's presence at least once a day. And remember that it's there and that you're not just alone and having to go through this whole life thing and be super independent. That's what I took away from it. And very last thing, the last note that I took on this mushroom experience was the fact that I didn't really feel like I needed to do psychedelics at that point. After I'd taken it, I was like, you know what? I kind of feel like I don't need to do more psychedelics right now because of that realization I had during the trip and the kind of general sense around my life. The fact was, I was pretty content and pretty happy going into this trip. There wasn't anything that I really wanted to deal with or take care of or to make better about my life. I was pretty good. And then I had the experience of Mother Earth or whoever telling me like, yeah, you don't really need to go do it. You can do it, but you don't need to. You can just kind of chill and enjoy yourself. I realized that perhaps the act of trying to constantly find things to improve about myself or fix about myself or demons to fight or whatever could just be a way of like me avoiding actually just being happy and content and good, right? Because if you're always trying to find more problems, you never allow yourself to just be happy when you can be happy. And the truth is, like, I have no reason not to be super happy right now. So by constantly finding more things, I'm just preventing myself from being happy. And that's stupid. So it reminds me of this quote from Mark Manson about self-help, where he says that self-help is kind of like prescriptive medicine. You don't need it all the time. It's kind of like when you have a problem, you get self-help to fix that problem, but you don't do it never-endingly, because then you just get in the cycle of always finding problems when there really don't need to be any. So that was my final realization, and I guess that's another piece of advice I would give to anyone who's considering doing mushrooms. If you are already pretty good and like you don't, I feel like there is value for pretty much anyone to explore their mind a little bit in this way, but it's not necessary. If you're having an issue and you have some psychological trauma or something, then I think it's very, very valuable. I wouldn't say that everyone needs to do it, but I definitely wouldn't recommend against everyone trying it at some point. In the right setting, with good people, with good intentions, and all that stuff. So that is my mushroom ceremony experience. I hope you got some entertainment out of it, some value out of it. I really enjoy telling this story because it's just hilarious, makes me laugh, and it makes me remember good lessons as well. So if you like this kind of content, I did another video on how mushrooms actually made me a better and happier entrepreneur, which you can find in one of these corners. Someday I'll remember which one. And other than that, I make a lot of videos about happiness and entrepreneurship and well-being and, I don't know, traveling, digital nomad kind of stuff. So check out my channel if that sounds interesting. Subscribe if you do like this kind of content, like the video, comment below. Had to do all three. Comment below, let me know what you think. Was it fun? Have you done mushrooms before? What's your experience? Any similarities? That's actually a really interesting thing. I've met other people that have had very similar experiences as me on mushrooms, which is a trip. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Mahalo, everyone. Take care.